The title of my paper is Language and Reality, Structural Similarity for Effective Communication. Before I read my paper, I would like to talk about why this topic, though it is a very simple paper, but it is very important one to be discussed. So I grabbed this opportunity to present a paper on the mathematical language which Korzybski is talking about. So Alfred Korzybski in Science and Sanity talks about a mathematical language. So scholars have worked on E-prime language. Writers like William Burroughs has experimented with the language suggested by Alfred Korzybski. But still, why those languages which have been developed, like E-prime language or other language suggested by creative writers, have not replaced the Aristotelian language system? Hence the paper, and I thought that this is the right opportunity for me to present the paper, as we do not get this platform in India. So I would really appreciate suggestions and your guidance how to go about it. I will present my understanding of the mathematical language suggested by Alfred Korzybski. In Korzybski, we find a profound disillusion, all pervasive in his entire work. Whatever he says, whichever subject matter he picks up, in every single way that he looks at the world around. And make no mistake, this disillusion again is the source of his optimism. It gives him great hope that once this fundamental disorder is corrected, the human limitations of thousands of years will express itself in a newfound enormity of potential and progress. The disillusion is all about the compartmentalization of scientific thinking to the so-called scientific experiments and innovations only. Korzybski sees the whole existence of human species through the prism of science. Our contemplations, inspiration, speech, action, anything and everything that is even remotely connected to the human biology or any field of human interface can be potentially guided by a scientific structure. The lack of that structure, which he attributes to the 2,000 years old Aristotelian framework, is the key to all our agony and cares and all the limitations that we have in spite of our enormous inherent potential. And the language is possibly the most profound example of Korzybskian anguish. The very way our language system has evolved over thousands of years, according to his scientific mind, is possibly the root cause of all misrepresentation and miscommunication, and therefore accounts for the monumental disorder that we find in this world today. I shall take the liberty to quote just one small sentence from chapter 4 of Science and Sanity that says it all. Korzybski says, "A number of isolated facts does not produce a science, any more than a heap of bricks produces a house." This is a profound statement, and if you look at it closely, it is actually an underlying metaphor that captures human disorder in every single field. Language, fortunately or unfortunately, is the conduit through which one human being connects to another. It is an unavoidable medium to express our thoughts, showcase our findings, present our talent, and even capture the after effect of our emotion. At the same time, words are not the object they represent. How often we get reminded that the map is not the territory. The object exists by itself and in itself. The word is just a creation of human convenience, which makes the object intelligible in the human way through a common reference point. So the way these words are tied up together can make or break our understanding. And that is the key to structural and semantic consideration of language and the bright or dark human experience it can potentially create. If maps are not territories and if words are not objects, how can a map explain the exactness of a territory? Or how can a word create the understanding of an object? Needless to mention that underlying accuracy of these representations lies an unfailing structure and structure alone. The world is empirical, but the language is like a map which only by its structure can potentially explain the phenomena of the objective world. But the irony is, while the crucial importance of a map is unambiguously acknowledged through its structure alone, and even though without a robust and universally accepted structure, any laboratory experiment loses its credibility. The structural accuracy of a language has been abused for thousands of years. In this structure, which is so vital and so fundamental to human understanding, available on a platter to us, had the discovery of this structure been so simple, there wouldn't have been so much of confusion. On the contrary, the boundary condition imposed upon human rationality by the Aristotelian framework has prevented us to having a scientific approach to language. Language for thousands of years has been restricted to a two-dimensional subject-predicate mode, whereas it has to be necessarily multidimensional, and that precisely is the project that Korzybski initiates in Science and Sanity. What is then the structure? The dictionary meaning says that structure is the manner in which a building or organism or other complete whole is constructed, supporting framework or whole of the essential parts of something. In other words, to have structure means we must have a complex of ordered and interrelated parts. It is this ordering which needs to be scientific in a manner that the possibility of negative consequences is eliminated, or at least restricted. If the bricks are not ordered scientifically through the right kind of reinforcement, the negative consequences of a building collapse would loom large. The building science has evolved in such a way as to avoid any such adversity. If automobile parts are not arranged in a particular proven scientific structure, the functioning of the machine will be suboptimal. In other words, science directs itself towards the accuracy of the structure through experimental innovation, mindful of the uncompromising criticality of the structural order. Language, on the contrary, has remained in an antiquated format, and unless this primitive mode gives way to a scientific design, the same language, which is like a map for the territory, will itself be a source of misrepresentation, misunderstanding, and incorrect communication. While on the subject of language, it is important to differentiate between the various worlds around us and how they really play out before us. Though not explicitly spelled out, Korzybski silently acknowledges the Kantian worlds of phenomena and noumena. There is a world out there, outside our biological system, which we can sense, but we can never know what it really is. The object of that world do exist in a certain form and shape, but our understanding of that world can only be to a limited extent as much as our sense can abstract. The way our five senses receive those objects, we shall understand the nominal world in that particular way. In other words, the objects are mere phenomena to us, and we understand them only in the human way. Had we had 10 senses in place of 5, those very objects would or could have possibly appeared to us differently. We shall therefore never know what the objects really are in themselves, which Kant so eloquently calls the nominal world. We are limited only to the world of our senses, or Kant's phenomenal world. In other words, two worlds are differentiated here, the world of actual objects and the world of our senses. There is a third world, which is our own biological world, that is, our body, our flesh and blood, our nervous system and senses. This world helps us understand the world out there partially, as they only appear to our senses, the phenomenal world. And finally, we come to the world of language, which stands for our attempt to map the territory. It is the world of words, the verbal world of symbols and alphabets, the names that we assign to the objects of our senses, and even the manner in which we contemplate using our own rationality. Therefore, the symbol we use in our language, the way we form opinion, develop beliefs, categorize the world of our senses, make assumptions, all of these processes become a part of the fourth world, what we call the world of words or language. Therefore, while the world of noumena and our own biological world exist a priori, the world of phenomena and the world of language can only emerge to us as posteriori. Amongst these two, a posteriori world, the world of phenomena makes use of our senses, whereas the world of language is a byproduct of human rationality. Korzybski seems to suggest that while our human rationality is innate to us, it is like a mold. We can use it the way we consciously decide to, and the product that emanates from the mold of our rationality will be accordingly casted. The Aristotelian framework has casted an overarching prejudice over our rationality, and therefore we have used it only in a particular way for thousands of years, limiting and restricting our true potential. The entire language system is an unfortunate causality of that particular Aristotelian tradition. It has held our rationality hostage and casted the language system through a two-dimensional structure of subject-predicate, whereas it should ideally have been multidimensional. Korzybski explained this boldly in Science and Sanity, and I quote, we see that the term collection, aggregate, class, order, relation, structure are interconnected, each implying the other. If we decide to face empirical reality boldly, we must accept Einstein-Minkowski four-dimensional language for space and time cannot be separated empirically, and so we must have a language of similar structure and consider the fact of the world as interrelated ordered events to which we must ascribe structure, unquote. So what exactly is Korzybski's enterprise on language? He dives deeper into the process of linguistic abstraction to create a new structure of language. Why is mathematics so objective and factual, whereas language is not so? It is because physical or daily life abstraction differ considerably from mathematical abstraction. Let us take any physical object. While abstracting the particulars of that object, it is humanly possible to abstract every single element or characteristic of that object and make the description of the object complete. However intensely we may try, certain particulars about that object will always be left out. The fallacy arises when we try to give completeness to our understanding about the object in our traditional and primitive language structure, whereas in reality we are far from understanding the totality of it. The language we use in our day-to-day life is based on this kind of absolutism or fixed essence based on assertion. This language structure embodies both intended and unintended contempt towards the point of views that we are not able to grasp in our abstraction process. Now, when we move to higher level of abstraction through which we assign meaning to descriptions, expressions, beliefs, opinion, etc., this kind of fallacy of absolutism and essence becomes much more intense, giving rise to misinterpretations, and therefore the net result, more often than not, is miscommunication and chaos. Such a language system betrays the fundamental of a mathematical structure. The fascination for mathematics and science has always dominated the landscape of human thinking as a barometer of objective progress. From Pythagoras to Hume and from Descartes to Russell, philosophers and thinkers have tried to explore how their contemplations can pass through the litmus test of mathematics and science. But Korzybski takes it to a completely new level. To him, it is science and only science that can bring in sanity to human engagement. The antiquated tradition, established over thousands of years, has actually made us insane, and unless we apply scientific methods to our linguistic structure, we shall continue to exist with insanity in spite of that extraordinary resource of human rationality that we may possess. Korzybski has set the ball rolling in no ambiguous term. In my view, the evolution of a scientific language can only start with a conscious acknowledgement that any essence-based assertion is the root cause of all linguistic fallacy. This acknowledgement will not only make the human species conscious and careful that their understanding about any object can only at best be partial, but it will also make them tolerant and respectful about the point of view of others. The fundamentals of this acknowledgement-based consciousness will initiate a continuous process with everyone trying to make their own partial understanding complete. In other words, the language system can then imbibe by design a framework where every element complements the other. This way, the confrontational overtones will gradually disappear, and it is only then the vehicle of language can trigger a kind of geometric progression in human engagement. In search of a scientific language, this can possibly be a good starting point of sanity. Thank you.